What up? So we've got another PEAVEY Butcher on the workbench today. Really happy to have this one in the shop because the PEAVEY Butcher is probably my favorite PEAVEY amp of all time. Modeled after, well, modeled very similar to the JCM 800, the 2203s and 2204s. We're going to do a recap, the bias mod, we're going to fix the output section. Just like we did in the last video, this one's going to be a little bit different. We are going to install the effects loop sold by Metro Amp and designed by the great Steve Miller. These are the loops that I use in all of my touring gear, at least in the amps that didn't have loops, that need loops. I still tour with plenty of amps that do not have effects loops, but for all intents and purposes, when I need one, these are the ones that I go for. They are amazing. The design is great. Now there are plenty of other loop designs out there, but this is by far my favorite. And very happy to be putting it in this amp. I really feel like that's the only thing missing from a Butcher, just like from a 2203 or 2204. The only thing missing is the addition of a really, really good effects loop. To install this loop, there's a couple of other things that have to happen first. For one, the location. The only possible places you could put it, I could maybe squeeze it in right here, but I don't want these to sit over top of these wires here. There's really not a whole lot of room. You also don't want to put it too close to these power lines over here. Otherwise, you're gonna run the risk of inducing some kind of hum. Looks like in this back corner here is probably the best candidate, but these wires here are in the way, and there's not a lot of depth in this chassis. I think I can actually take this transformer and rotate it 90 degrees. I'll just have to drill another hole here. That'll get these wires out of the way. This pot right here, this hum balance control, I think I can just loosen the nut and turn that around. That way I can get my circuit board and my switch right there. No other wires will be in the way. We're going to take these loose anyway because we're going to redo this output section, so most of the transformer will already be unwired. To finish the recap, we're going to have to pull this board and flip it as well. But one of the resistors there is probably also where we're going to take our B+ to power the board. And we do have to take readings based on the amp in its stock condition so we don't affect the plate voltage too much. It's important to take readings of the amp in its stock form because you don't want to affect the sound when you're installing this loop. You want it to be transparent. You want everything back to normal. So we're going to have to adjust some components in the B+ section as well to keep the voltage right. But before we do that, I think we should do the recap first and rotate the transformer and get all that, and do the bias mod. We'll get all that out the way. That way, when we start taking readings, we're taking readings from a nice, fresh install, a fresh amp, and we're going to get this thing sounding awesome. First part of the recap is, let's go ahead and pull this power supply board here. And the whole thing's out. Didn't have to desolder anything. Didn't have to clip any wires. That's amazing. R53, 47K stock, and R52, 470 ohm stock. I'm going to replace this one with a 3K resistor. I'm going to replace this one with a 10K resistor, and instead of this going straight to ground, I'm going to shoot this in line with a potentiometer that I've already lost. Alright, there you can see I have my board. That is in there rock solid. Alright, next we got to change out this piece right here. Our bias modification is now complete. I have removed the piece that was here that was a 47K, that's R53. I've replaced it with a 10K resistor in series with a 22K potentiometer. And this other one down here, this is R52, that is a 470 ohm resistor. I've replaced it with a 3K. That should get your bias where it needs to be, and you can adjust it with a small screwdriver here. So on the preamp tube board here, we're going to do the recap, but thinking about our effects loop, you have a dropping resistor, a 47K dropping resistor here, and a 10K one here. I'm really hoping that I can pull the power I need for the loop off of this component. In order to keep the B plus for the rest of the amp the same, I'm going to have to probably end up lowering the value of this if this one works out. I got to measure the voltage across it to see if it's even an adequate source. I do not know the voltages off of here firsthand. I should be able to wire another resistor in parallel behind it, so I can actually do this. I can recap this preamp board, flip it back over, and mount it in place, and I won't have to turn it back over again. Cut this shit out. Oh shit. Yeah, I think the the memory card filled up while I was recapping this, but nothing special to see. Just replaced all the caps. I tried to clean up as much of that old hot glue as I could. When I put them back, I use liquid E-tape. Probably a little bit harder to get off later on. I think it might last a little bit longer than the glue, at least the hold. But we'll see. Either way, these pieces ain't going anywhere. A couple other things have to happen before I can get this loop in there. I'm going to have to take this front board off so I can get the signal, or I'm just going to lift one of the legs of these pots and run a couple wires from here to my switch. But before I can even mount my switch, I want to turn this transformer like 90 degrees over and relocate this hole just to pull all these wires out of my way so I can get this right in here. Now you could probably push these down and get it without doing that, but I'd rather make this thing look neat. I want to treat this like it was my own amp. We're going to have to turn this hum balance control around as well. Let's take these zip ties out here. You're holding this on. Cool. Let's just do the easiest part first. Hum balance control turned around. Go ahead and redo this output section because we're going to have to take it all loose. We'll just go ahead and cut these off anyway because we know we're going to redo this. And we're replacing this output section because it's not very intuitive. If you look at the labels on the back, it pretty much just says 1 16 ohm speaker, or 2 or 3 or 4 16 ohm speakers, or 1 8, 1 4. It doesn't tell you if you can use 2 8s. It doesn't make a lot of sense. The taps are just like any other amp. You got 4, 8, and 16 ohm taps. We're just improving a really short-sighted design that never caught on. Now let's turn it the way we want and just see if these holes line up. Man, that's awesome. Perfect. Perfect. So now look, all those wires are going to show up here instead of back here, so I've got nothing in the way of this now. So we've got our jacks in place. Pretty much at a point where I need to start wiring the jacks back up before I can get my output transformer in here. But there's actually one more thing I got to do. I still have to take this front panel off and get one of these pots loose to run the wires for my loop, the signal carrying wires. And I might as well do that with the transformer out so it's a little bit easier to move around. So let's go ahead and flip this guy. Oh man, way easier to do this with transformers out. Well, I have our signal wires coming from the master volume pot here, going to our switch, our bypass switch for the loop. The loop is ready to be mounted, but it looks like I'll probably have to get that transformer back in there first. It's not a problem. Cool. If you look at that, it looks like we got everything ready to rock. I've taped my B plus wire off because there's going to be no power going to this loop, so it's not going to work. So we're going to have to make sure to get sound. We need to have this switch in the off position. We'll go ahead and throw some bias probes on there. We'll bias it up. We'll write down some of the voltages throughout the amp and see where we can get the B plus for our effects loop. All right, well, she's warmed up and powered on. So far, so good. Without even touching the bias, I've got about 48. I'm pulling 48 milliamps on each side. Let's go ahead and do some math. And if I read our plate voltage, looks like I'm coming at about 495. So it should be around like 42 milliamps, 42 and a half. So let's see if our bias adjustment does the trick. I guess you can't see my meters, but I've got 2 meters sitting off to the side here. Cool. These tubes are really, really well matched. Let's read our plate voltage again. And still got 496, 495, 30 watts divided by your plate voltage times 70% of your max idle current. Yep, 42 and a half. And my bias probes, I'm sitting right at like 42.7, 43. I think that's great. Awesome. Well, let's see if it makes sound. All right, so now we're going to focus on finding a good B plus source for our loop and get our loop to work. These two components right here, these are dropping resistors for the B plus power supply that feeds the plates of some of these preamp tubes. It seems like the voltage is too low over here to pull from, so I had to pull it from back here. The B plus voltage back here was very high. It was 458 where I have this alligator clip. Using some simple math, Ohm's law here, I wanted to get this loop powered at about 300 volts. The instructions say that the loop draws 1.7 milliamps. You got to use some simple math to figure out what kind of resistors you need to feed this the correct B plus. And the way I did that is the instructions for the loop say to aim for about 300 volts. I was getting 458 volts here, and on the other side it was too low. It was like under 250. What did I write down? It was like 245. I needed a little bit over 300 to get what I need over here. If you take 458 volts, which you have here, minus the 300 I want, that leaves you with 158. Divide that by the current draw, which is 1.7 milliamps. 158 divided by 0.0017 equals 92,941. 92,941. That'll be the resistance you need for your dropping resistor, which is 93K. The closest thing I can get is I put 247K resistors in series, equal about 94K. And now I'm looking at my meter here, and it says I've got about 295 volts, which is pretty much exactly what I want. So that's cool. I'm only pulling a few volt difference, which I don't think is much. That's great. That means I might not have to change either one of those dropping resistors at all. 2 volts less than I was when I took my initial reading. Don't think that's going to make a difference. Cool. Now I know that I can just put these 2 resistors in series from here, run it to my B plus wire that I've just got kind of hanging out here, and we should be good to go. I'll do that. I'll check the bias one more time, and then we'll box it up. Yeah. Hey, so the loop's in, it's tested, it's rocking and rolling, the thing sounds awesome. Let's do a quick demo. So right now, the loop is actually engaged, and it's quiet as a mouse because I have my pedal board here. Just something simple to make sure the loop works. I've got an Ibanez tube screamer up front, a decimator G-string unit pedal which is why the loop is quiet. If I turn this off, see, you just get like a little bit of hum. The amp is not inherently noisy as it is, but most amps you're just going to get at least that. Anyway, if I turn this pedal back on, it's quiet as a mouse. And if you want to hear the difference between the loop on and off, I mean, it's pretty simple. There's not much has changed. That's on. So when the loop is off, it's completely bypassed from the circuit. Like it's stock. There's nothing else going on there. A big fan of the Metro loops because they all sound so great. They're transparent. Zero tone loss. Anyway, I like putting effects loops in for delay alone. You know, maybe some delay and some flange. I think they sound the best in the loop. But let's rock some delay. I've got a TC Electronics flashback in the loop here. Pretty cool. And I've also got an MXR 108 EQ in the loop. I don't use that all the time, but I think in any kind of amp, if you want to just accentuate something certain, right now, the amp sounds good, the tone sounds good, it's a little flat. So if I step on this, I'm going to boost it a little bit at about 60 hertz. Tad bit at 125. You don't want too much in 125 because that's where your kick drum's hitting. But here you go. Off. Just gives it a little bit more oomph. I think the best thing you can do with EQ is subtle changes. You don't want big changes. Another staple on my pedal board is an Ibanez tube screamer, just a regular stock TS9, nothing fancy, no mods. Everything off. Tube screamer. Put that EQ back on. Dude, these amps sound fucking great. You know, a little bit of TLC goes a long way. So putting the loop in, do yourself a big favor. And if you got one of these, sell it to me so I can have it and put a loop in it. This one's going back to a customer, but I could jam on this thing all night. Let's throw some more. Now that we got EQ and overdrive and delay, let's put them all together. Not bad. That's the PEAVEY Butcher, man. shit. Shit. All right, so cool. PEAVEY Butcher with the effects loop in it, completely recapped. We also did a bias mod in it. I'm just going into a 16 ohm Marshall cabinet with G12 65s in it. This is an old school JCM 800 cab with original speakers. Into an SM57, into my Scarlett something interface. It's the red one. I don't think you need much more to get a great guitar tone other than a good set of speakers and a single SM57. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe if you dig it.